going to bring up our guest, Garth Michael Patrick from Florida, resident Tampa Bay Lightning fan. Garth, welcome to the show. Appreciate you joining us. And how are you feeling, man? We've got about 40 minutes till that puck drops for game one. And I know you're nervous. I'm nervous as well. Man, welcome.
Yeah, it's a lot of excitement leading up to the series, guys. But once that game one gets this close, the nerves are definitely setting in, especially being on the road the first two games. But yeah, how are you guys? Excited to be here tonight, Tom, Kyle? Really excited to talk this series.
I'm excited to talk about it with you, man. It's again, I got no horse in the race, but it's gonna be a hell of a series. I really do believe that it's gonna be a hell of a series between just the goalies alone. It's just gonna be an unbelievable performance by both Shesterkin and Vasilevskiy.
Yeah, definitely the best goalie matchup I think that we've had in years in postseason.
Yeah.
I can't even, not at least in recent years, remember a goalie matchup this good. If you look way back, yes, you've got like Lundqvist and Brodeur, but not in recent memory.
So this is Garth Michael Patrick, folks. He is the co-host of the Sweet Tea podcast, or the Sweet Tea show on the Sports Box with Noah Dibler. Garth, if you want to plug that in quickly here before we preview tonight's pivotal game one.
Yeah, most definitely. So we go live every Friday night, guys, here on Facebook through the Sweet Tea Show. You can find us on our own personal page for the show here on Facebook, as well as, you can follow us indirectly through the Sports Box as well. You get notifications through them every time that we go live. And we kind of talk a wide array of stuff. I think me and Noah, my co-hosts, are most passionate about NHL and college football, but we definitely, love NFL, a little bit of motorsports talk on there, Formula One, professional dirt bike racing. So we cover a lot, but we have our favorites, no doubt. And right now we're talking one of our favorites in playoff hockey.
It's crazy. We're talking about the goaltenders in this series, and here is Noah. There he is. Yeah, you guys have been talking about this all week with me. Pretty much ever since Monday night. Well, before that, but I had a hard time accepting the fact that you guys coined Igor as the second best goalie in hockey. Because in my personal opinion, I was like, whoa, people are giving.
Oh no, give him a minute.
And I think this series concerns me. Sorry, I might have been a little bit frozen there, but this series concerns me a little bit because Tampa has something that Carolina and Pittsburgh did not. Elite goaltending. And Garth, imagine if Vasilevskiy was still in his prime.
Little inside joke there between me and Noah. We actually had a Rangers fan, not Tom, obviously, say that Vasilevskiy was past his prime and that Igor had taken the torch to be the number one goaltender in the NHL.
And little did they know, Igor is only 1 year younger than Andrei Vasilevskiy. Fun fact. Chris Nosek with the comment, two best goaltenders in the world face off in the Eastern Conference Finals. Two of the best forwards in the world, McDavid and McKinnon, face off in the Western Conference Finals. Rangers' massive goalie advantage is gone for this series. Unfortunately, I'd have to agree with that. The Lightning are the back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. They have not played in over a week, Garth. I think almost two at this point. You're very well rested. Do you view that as an advantage, somewhat of a concern if there's some rust, or a combination of both?
So my take on it, honestly, is that we definitely needed the rest for sure. We had a lot of guys who were banged up. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I saw a stat where it's like the Lightning had played 30 or 40 more games than any other team currently in the playoffs because of having gone back to back. We had that shortened, weird, compressed season due to COVID, as well as the bubble before that. So it's been a really good but strange bit of hockey for us these past few seasons. So I do like the fact that we're able to get some rest. I will say I am definitely a little bit concerned about rust, though. I think that, if there is going to be some rust to knock off, I think what you're going to see is a slow start here to this game one, maybe like a first period where we don't really look like ourselves. But, I definitely remain optimistic just because this group does collectively have so much playoff experience. So, will we come out rusty, not look like ourselves. Yeah, it's a very, very possible thing, but I wouldn't bet on it just because of the experience of this group.
What do you think, Kyle? Do you think the experience of the Lightning gives them an edge in this series, or do you think the Rangers' youth could help them in these early games with the home ice?
I think the experience wins, and the Rangers have played, fantastic. They have, but the difference between the Penguins and couple differences between the Penguins and Carolina, when looking at the Penguin situation, as much as you want to accredit the Rangers for coming back, you got to remember in every comeback they put themselves in that situation to force a comeback. They forced themselves in a 3-1 deficit, and obviously the turning point in that series, Sidney Crosby going out, and the Rangers got some life back. You win Game 7. Against a Louis Domingue, right? You go to Carolina. Defense in the first 2 games carries in Carolina's favor. You guys go back home, the Rangers meaning, and they play absolutely fantastic. And they wind up winning the series. Again, give Ronta his flowers, but he's a 1B type goalie. He's not the number 1 guy. Anderson got hurt in practice with a lower body injury around Game 4, Game 5, and he wasn't able to make that comeback that Carolina was expecting. Now you go into Tampa, and everybody likes to say that, oh, the rest is a bad thing. Meanwhile, everybody's saying that Tampa's time is done because they haven't had any rest. So what is it? You've had 9 days off now. Is the rest going to help them or is it going to hurt them? I think it's going to help them, especially because, Garth, like you talked about, they've got some guys banged up. In fact, Braden Point, as of 20 minutes ago, has announced that he will not be playing in this game tonight, which is huge for Tampa, obviously. But because of the fact that you have guys who are not only experienced, but phenomenal in Vasilevskiy, Stamkos, Kucherov, Killorn, Palat, Hedman. The list goes on and on. I'm missing guys because of how deep you guys are. Whereas when you look in the Rangers in the Penguins series and the Carolina series, have they been faced with the best matchups? Not really. And have they put themselves in really bad situations? Yes, they've been able to dig themselves out of. But are the Rangers coming back from a 3-1 deficit against Tampa? Probably not. And are they coming back even from a 3-2 deficit like they had in Carolina against the Tampa Bay Lightning? I would say probably not. So I think those are things that you have to look at, that as much as we want to applaud the comeback, we have to realize why the comeback happened in the first place is because they weren't showing up early. Now, obviously, home ice advantage and Braden pointing out sets up a nice little storyline for a Game 1 victory in favor of the Rangers. But I think Game 1 is going to be a telling tale for what's going to play out the rest of the series.
Yeah. Oh, it's a good point. And I also think, Garth, I mean, you could piggyback off this if you'd like. I think the physicality from both teams is very even. You're talking about guys like Ryan Reeves, Jacob Trouba on the Rangers end, and you guys have plenty physicality on your own end that I'm sure you want to talk about as well.
Yeah, so I definitely expect this to be a very physical series, guys. What I'm interested to see is, will it turn chippy? Are we going to see those scrums in front of the goaltenders, pushing, shoving, throwing punches after whistles, that kind of stuff? Or is it going to be very physical but very disciplined? Because one thing that I definitely want to see out of my Lightning in this series is we got to stay out of the box, because this is a Rangers unit that has thrived on the power play throughout the playoffs so far. So we got to bring the physicality, but we got to play smart. We can't put ourselves in bad position, drawing stupid penalties with stuff like that. But, like you said, Tom, both of these teams are very physical. We've got guys like Eric Chernak. He's a big bruiser. Hedman really isn't known for being like a big-time hitter or fighter or anything, but he definitely brings physicality in his own ways. Guys like Sergachev, Cal Foot's a guy who Noah loves that I've been really impressed with, despite his inexperience, one of the few younger guys on this roster. Obviously, your guy, Tom, Ryan McDonough, that dude is an absolute workhorse. He's like that guy in the NFL that gets 20 to 30 carries every single week. That dude is just he's a workhorse, man. I love him. I'm so happy that we've got him on this team. But really, with Point Out, we'll be a little bit thin at the forward position. We just had to go through that with the Panthers. It panned out pretty well, so hopefully we can continue that trend. But, defensemen, we're deep. We throw a lot of really, really good defensemen at teams. We stay fresh, and I think that's why we do so well collectively defensively. I think that, honestly, we really didn't get talked about enough coming into postseason with how good defensively this team can be. It's not only just Vasilevskiy in goal. You know, like I always tell you, Tom, these guys are laying their bodies on the line to block shots.
Yeah.
You know, having injuries. One of the games against the Panthers, Stamkos had to go back to the locker room like 4 different times from blocking shots. But yeah, I expect a lot of physicality in this series, guys.
Yeah. And Ryan Lindgren did the same thing for the Rangers, especially in that game 7. And I want to bring up some comments here because we have stuff blowing up. Chris says Tampa Bay takes this for one reason only, and I'm sure he's referring to Andrei Vasilevskiy. Chris says Ronta isn't even a 1B, at best a 2A. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair opinion. I think you could argue both ends of the spectrum with that. Ronta has one season in his career with more than 40 games started. DeSmith and Domingue are career backups. Vasilevskiy is a massive step up for those two as you can get. Chris, Rangers played Tampa Bay strong in all 3 matchups during the regular season. The Rangers did sweep the season series against the Tampa Bay Lightning 3-0. But Vasi in the playoffs, with the rest he's gotten, yikes. That's an interesting comment there. And Noah posed a question that I forgot to bring up. Kyle briefly touched upon it. We're planning to play without him. And this is a quote from Lightning head coach John Cooper. If he gets to play in this series, that's a bonus for everybody. That's John Cooper on Braden Point. Garth, what are your thoughts on potentially playing this series without Braden Point? Who do you think steps up into that Braden Point role? And it could be more than one guy.
Yeah, so a guy who did a lot of it in the last series with the Florida Panthers was Nikita Kucherov. He kind of, went from that guy who we know as a dominating goal scorer. He didn't really play with the puck in his hands a ton to pretty much, I wouldn't say fill in that role because Point is just so phenomenal at bringing the puck up the ice and setting up other guys to score. But he did a really good job of that. I expect him to continue in that kind of role. I'd like to see Nick Paul. I think he played really good against the Panthers, but we definitely saw the best out of him in that series with the Maple Leafs, especially, those last 2 games. So I'd like to see him step up. And just guys, collectively to fill those shoes, guys like Brandon Hagel. So I don't think it'll be just one guy, but definitely look for Nikita Kucherov to carry kind of the bulk of that load that we don't have with Point out there on the ice.
Kyle, what do you think? And I want to pick your brain.
So, again, when it comes to the depth of the Tampa Bay Lightning, I don't think you ever have to really worry about the scoring option. I think that is there. Obviously, Braden Point is a tremendous loss. In fact, I know it firsthand as an Islander fan. Last year, that was the kryptonite to the Islander season, as they just could not stop the bleeding, and Braden Point was absolutely incredible. And I think that losing him, because when I read that commentary, I thought that he just would be out for game 1. I didn't realize the entire Eastern Conference Finals was up in the air, so that's going to be a huge loss. But again, with the depth in which they have, I think that they should be able to be okay. Obviously, it's a major loss, but with the team in which they've built together, I think it could withstand an injury like that.
It's fair. It is very, very fair to say that. And I want to get to Brian Attard's comment quickly here. Brian, I'm not sure if you're in attendance. Comment if you are, because I know Hank is. A lot has been said about the goalies the Rangers have played, but who exactly have the Lightning played? Campbell and Bob both stink. Thoughts on that, Garth?
Yeah, so, I won't strongly disagree with Brian because he does make a really good point. Obviously, Bob is known as the career regular season solid goalie, playoff choker. Everybody who follows hockey knows that. Campbell, really hasn't been like a great goalie in his NHL career. I wouldn't say he's been terrible, but I will say, and I talked a lot about it during that series, he had some really damn good performances in that first series where we literally could not get anything past him. I think he even stole a game or 2 for them in that series. So, yeah, I definitely see Brian's argument. I don't strongly disagree with it. I think he's pretty spot on, other than I do think Campbell had some really solid performances in that series.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Bob, no problem. But Campbell, I mean, he forced 7 games against the Tampa Bay Lightning because he played very well, especially game 1. He forced a shutout against the Tampa Bay Lightning to start off the series. Now, obviously, Toronto loses that series, but I think, Brian, the difference as well, not just with the goalie comparison, but the offense in which they're playing, right? When you look at the offense that Pittsburgh played, obviously it came down to 3 guys, one of which you could not stop, between Malkin, Crosby, and Gensel, I believe his name is, just
Gunsel,
could not
yeah.
stop. Gunsel could not stop him whatsoever. You look at Carolina, we talked about it a little earlier. You stop Sebastian Aho, especially the way that the rest of the Hurricanes were playing in the first series against the Boston Bruins, you were probably going to win that series combined with the fact the goalie injury. You look at who Tampa's faced. Yes, the goaltenders haven't been the greatest. I'll give credit to Bob, but not Campbell. You got to face up against Mitch Marner, John Tavares, Austin Matthews. You go to Florida, you got to play against guys like Barkov, Garou, a bunch of other guys, Huberto, I believe, as well.
Yeah.
Fantastic offensive weapons that we're talking about, guys. So I think I be quite honest, that's a major difference between what the Rangers have gone up against, faced off of versus what the Lightning have gone up against.
And folks, as you see Brian's comment, if you love the New York Rangers, make sure to go check him out on Blue Truth, which is a show on the Sports Box Network. Brian talks all things New York Rangers, and I know he's been taking a break, but he also hosts Highly Opinionated with Mike Galetta Tuesdays at 8:30 p.m. And Noah with another comment: Vasilevskiy versus Shesterkin, McDavid versus McKinnon. Two great matchups to watch as a relatively neutral fan. Neutral fan, Noah. I think you're pulling hard for. I saw the team you picked in the outside the box sports talk group before. I know you're pulling hard for the Lightning. And what really sucks about this series, my favorite NHL player is on the damn Lightning. So it's like if the Rangers lose this series, of course I'll be heartbroken. But can you really be that mad if Ryan McDonagh gets another ring? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. If the Lightning beat and. If you're a Rangers fan and you're watching right now, I do want your take on this. If the Lightning beat the Rangers in this series, right, I'm rooting for the Lightning to win the Stanley Cup. Only because of the respect that I have for the Tampa Bay Lightning, the amount of success they've had as of late. And there's a lot of former Rangers on this team. Granted, I would like to see a three-peat as well to get it off of, that team out east. But no pun intended there, Kyle. But, I just really think that Rangers fans might want to consider rooting for the Lightning, even if they lose this series. I'm not saying the Rangers are going to lose this series. You'll find out my prediction in a few moments. But what do you guys think about that?
For me personally, again, I've been rooting for the three-peat. When I made that prediction about the Rangers making it to the Eastern Conference Finals, I put the cap right at there because I figured the Tampa Bay Lightning would be the one to kind of cut the run in which they've had. But to be quite honest, if Connor McDavid wins the cup, that's awesome. If Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar win the cup, that's awesome. Tampa three-peats, that's awesome. The Rangers winning the cup, it'll hit a little different as an Islander fan. But again, as a New Yorker, 22 years on this earth and only 4 championships to represent the city of New York with as many sports teams as we do have here, very limited. So it would be nice to see another championship, especially because we haven't seen one in the last 11 years. So would be nice, no doubt about it.
Never forget the Penguins have been more successful since 2009 than the Flyers have in their entire history. I love this guy. I mean, I feel like sometimes he pulls these comments out of his ass, but they're just absolutely hysterical, Noah. And shout out to Vinny Milani from Jacksonville, Florida. Not many Rangers actually. No, I shouldn't say that. There are a lot of Rangers fans in Florida because there's a lot of New Yorkers in Florida, Garth. So I'm interested to see if the Rangers are able to crowd their way into Amalie Arena for games 3 and 4. That should be quite interesting. But Vinny, a Jacksonville resident and host of the Sac City podcast, huge Rangers fan. So shout out to Vinny Milani. Brian Attard says he's going to game 2.
Very nice.
Hank says warm-ups, puck drop will start soon, so I have to sign off for the night. Always a pleasure. LFGR. And gosh, Noah, Chris, and Brian are absolutely ripping this up right now. Tampa boat raced the Hall of Fame goalie in the finals last year. First and foremost, Campbell and Bobrovsky are almost the same talent level in goals allowed on average. Very, very true. These are good stats to bring up, Chris. And the save percentage for Bobrovsky. I think the issue that Brian has is his recent success in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Right? Blowing a series lead. I think that's more the issue that he has. And he does agree with Garth, 110% right. Neither hold a candle to these two. Man, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to watch these two goalies play. And we were bringing this up before you came on, Garth. The Rangers and the Lightning are the two worst face-off teams in the National Hockey League. Is that a coincidence?
I think that's one of those stats where people look a little bit too much into. Obviously there's key faceoffs that you got to try and win, like in the offensive zone, power plays, stuff like that. But I've seen a lot of Lightning games, especially playoff games, where we've lost the faceoff battle and yet we still win the game. So it's kind of just one of those nitpick stats, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's just something I wanted to bring up. I found it a little bit ironic.
I think both the Avalanche and Edmonton are ranked pretty low too as well.
Yes, I believe they're in like the bottom 10 or something like that. Man, I don't know if there's an argument going on in the comment section or what's going on.
Everybody just wants their comment to be posted on. That's what it is. It's got to be that, right?
Scoring 3 points in 4 games. Yep, that's all on Sergei Bobrovsky.
I was just going to say that was one of the points as well, and Noah's point as well. They humiliated a team that was the best team by points in the entire NHL. So I don't think that's comparable in terms of what the Rangers face. That's just my personal opinion compared to what Tampa faced.
No,
in their playoff race.
I do agree. And to piggyback off of Brian's point, though, I mean, it's not like Tampa has gone up against Harvard scholars in net, right?
Yeah.
I think that's more the point he's trying to make. I do think the Lightning's level of the opposition talent in the net has been superior than what the Rangers have faced. But at the same time, both teams trailed in their opening series, came back and won it. Rangers did it again against Carolina, and I think there's something that needs to be said about that. This all isn't just on Igor, right? Majority of it is, but you have to give credit to guys like Chris Kreider, Adam Fox, who consistently gets points from the defensive position. We also need to talk about what guys like Artemi Panarin have done as of late. People want to criticize Lafreniere and Kakko, but quite frankly, look at what they've done their first 2 years. Lafreniere has progressed, right? He scored 19 goals this year. A lot of people that were drafted this high aren't even producing these types of numbers in the NHL. They're not even – some of these guys are 21 and 20 years old. They're babies, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to criticize these guys this much, I think you're doing yourself a disservice in doing that. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Rangers fan, but that's the reality of the situation. It's the same thing with Jack Hughes out in New Jersey. So
well, obviously the spotlight gets heightened when you're on a team that's competing. I mean, that was the thing. The Rangers won the lottery back-to-back years. They weren't supposed to be picking that high. When you look at New Jersey, they were picking number one for a reason. I think that's the difference in why the spotlight is heightened on these guys for the Rangers. More so, I think, with Kakko than Lafreniere, because Lafreniere, you could see it. Like, he's coming. But Kakko now in year 3, you just don't know what he is yet. And I think that's probably the reason why the spotlight is escalated, especially now being in an Eastern Conference Finals and 4 games away from going to a Stanley Cup.
Kyle, to continue your rant, I think you might want to answer Brian's question here.
Yeah, I saw this in the New York Post today. I don't really have a take, to be honest, because of the fact that I've said my piece with I like the dynasty factor. I think that's really, really cool, especially because I think in terms of any longevity, in terms of back-to-back-to-back, the last time that's happened was the Islanders back in the 80s when they won 4 in a row. I don't know if there's been a three-peat since that period in time. I don't think so. So it'd be really cool to see a team do that. And again, I don't really play too much into the fact that, the Tampa Bay Lightning have eliminated the Islanders in back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals. There's no hate there towards them. Now with the Rangers, again, the only reason as an Islander fan, and I am in my respected New York teams in my fandom, I don't hate the other team, root against them unless they're playing against my team. So if I'm an Islanders fan, I'm hating the Rangers. If they're not playing each other, it doesn't matter to me. The only reason why I guess I would say I'm rooting a little bit against the Rangers in terms of who I want to get knocked out is because I know that when the Islanders had lost in Game 7, especially the way they lost last year in the Eastern Conference Finals with a shorthanded after not letting up one all year.
Know where this is going.
All the Ranger fans crawled out and would not lay off the gas for weeks. So to see the Rangers, I don't want to say lose in a similar fashion, but have the season cut off right then and there, that would be a little bit of payback. Whereas if, the Tampa Bay Lightning, again, not only did they beat the Islanders twice in the Eastern Conference Finals, but they won the whole thing. Whereas if the Rangers, same area, you'll never hear the end of it. As I asked Tom, you heard it from Brian's mouth last week. When I asked him the same question about, what could have been in a 5-4 scenario, the argument would have been set in stone until obviously the Rangers were able to tie that up potentially if the Islanders did win last year with another cup to then retie the record. What was that like growing up in the 80s when the Islanders had 4 and the Rangers at that point in time had only had 3? What was that like, that period of time from 83 to 94? And he said firsthand is that people would not let go of 1940. And so as an Islander fan, I don't want that to be the relived fashion of the Rangers now leading the Islanders 5-4 and having to hear about it year in and year out that, 5-4, 5-4, 5-4, 5-4. That's why I'm rooting for Tampa in a sense. But Brian, I read that same article about the Rangers and Tampa Bay Lightning.
Look, I don't like the Islanders at all. I wouldn't consider myself on the level of Brian Attard, but to endure after 93 until 94, the idea that the Islanders would beat them to it again, unbearable. Well, and here's the thing. I'm not saying all, but some Rangers fans, they won't let go of anything. Hell, they won't let go of Potvin sucks. You're going to hear that thing chanted in the Garden like 800 times tonight, and that has nothing to do with either of the teams playing on the ice. And you're going to hear it about 5 times when you're watching the game on your TV tonight on ESPN. Once that dumbass in the stands starts doing that whistle, you're going to know what's coming, right? And Hank is going to sit there with his hands on his ass saying, oh my gosh, this has to stop. And it's never going to stop. So, but Garth, I do want to get your prediction for this series here because I know we are on a time crunch with you due to puck drop happening in about 15 minutes. So what is your prediction for this series and why?
Yeah, so I said it before we even knew this matchup. Out of the 2 teams, I would have rather faced the Hurricanes because, I knew any team that couldn't win a road game was not going to be able to knock out the Lightning in a playoff series. You have to at least win 1 game there, in my opinion. 2, they struggled on the power play. Their power play was absolutely abysmal. Just like the Florida Panthers, we saw how far that got them. And 2, I feel like they're that team that wants to have that tough persona. They want to be that physically imposing team, but we saw it with the Rangers. As soon as you actually take the fight to them, once you start being really physical with them, they're like, oh, wait, we don't really want to do this dance with you guys. So, and then obviously Igor, he is easily the best goalie out of those 2 teams that we would have to go up against. With that said, I've been saying I expect this to be a really, really tough, hard-fought, physical series. I kind of see pretty much 2 extremes here in predictions. I either see a lot of people saying 6 or 7 games, or I see the select few people saying, oh, well, the Lightning are going to sweep or win in 5. I personally don't see that. I'm very biased towards my Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm very passionate. I love them, but I just don't see that happening. MSG has been absolutely phenomenal in the playoffs. I love home atmospheres that are that, amazing. So they're definitely going to be able to win some games at home. I think my official prediction in this is going to be 6 games, 4-2 Tampa Bay Lightning, but I think every single game is going to be close in this series. I don't really see a lot of blowouts either way. And quite frankly, I don't think that we're going to have a lot of high-scoring games. I think this is going to be a very defensive series. Yes, you might have an outlier or 2 where one team scores 4 or 5 goals, but for the most part, I'd like to think that this is going to be a defensive series with both goaltenders playing amazing.
Solid prediction. We know what Noah's prediction is. Lightning in 4. Kyle, what is your prediction?
Yeah,
I think I know what it is.
I'm going to say the Lightning in 6. And again, I think that the Rangers have done an excellent year in terms of their push so far and what they've done just in a short stint of time. Obviously, I think the rebuild and some people's prediction, not mine. how the rebuild period in time escalated rather quicker versus a longer period of time for this Rangers team. But when I look at this Tampa Bay Lightning team, I think they look at what happened against Columbus a couple years back, and they just want to bury that as far down as possible. And they're on this absolute tear. They don't kind of feed into the noise of fatigue or whatever it is, and now they don't really have that excuse anymore now that they've had 9 days off to prepare for this Rangers team. As in, where you look at Rangers fans and the team in general, all you hear about repetitively, especially when they were going down in against Tampa, up against the against the Hurricanes and against the Penguins, all you heard was Igor hasn't played this many games before. This is why he's struggling a little bit. This team hasn't been here before. Youth. But then they come back and win the whole thing. Well, I don't think that you're going to be as comfortable with the Tampa Bay Lightning as you can losing a game to the Penguins, as you can be losing a game against the Carolina Hurricanes, because they don't necessarily have the weapons to combat to get themselves back into a series, as in the Tampa Bay Lightning. As I brought up earlier, you put the Tampa Bay Lightning in a 3-1 lead against the Rangers not come back. You put them in a 3-2 lead against the Rangers not come back. So I'm going to say 6-game series with Tampa Bay Lightning, crowned victorious, going back to a third Stanley Cup.
My head says Tampa in 6, and Garth and Noah know this because that's what I said prior to the Rangers-Canes series ended. However, my heart and Rangers bias in me is saying Rangers in this series, and I'm going to get to my prediction now. So if this series goes to 7 games, the Rangers would host the Lightning on the 28th anniversary of Game 7, where they won the 1994 Stanley Cup Finals. Sounds like, a really good date for the Rangers to potentially pull that out in front of their fans at the Garden. Again, my head's telling me Lightning, but my heart's telling me Rangers, and Brian brings up a good point here. That date, June 14th, there's something about that date that is sticking with me in my head. And at this point, your team has gotten here this far. I'm going Rangers in 7 to advance to the Stanley Cup final. And I want to say that with emotion of confidence, but I can't say that I have that yet. There is potential for this series to be over in 5 games, but quite frankly, I feel like if you guys are in my shoes, you got to go with your team here. It's the conference finals. If you don't pick your team to win the conference finals, I think there's something wrong. So I'm going with the Rangers in 7. I really like what Chris Kreider has been in this. And if Igor can step up to the plate and play on the same level as Igor Shesterkin, then the Rangers could potentially advance to the Stanley Cup final. But Tom is a homer. We're all homers, Noah.
Noah's a savage in the conversation. Look at this.
I think the world of and look, I do. I think the Lightning are the better hockey team. I do. Sometimes the better team doesn't always come out on top, though. That's the final thing.
Especially in playoff hockey.
Yeah.
Right. And the thing is, too, Garth, get those 26. I think he's referring to 2015, right? Eastern Conference.
No, so me and Noah love to talk about how, all those seasons that the Lightning came up short in postseasons. There was a lot of doubt leading up to before that sweep with the Columbus Blue Jackets, whether or not, we could ever get over the hump with these star players like Stamkos and Kucherov ever actually kind of live up to that hype and postseason play. And finally, it did happen, but he likes to remind me of all that doubt that used to be out there for the Tampa Bay Lightning.
I agree 100%. Again, I could easily see the Lightning winning this series. But Garth, I want you to, I know you got to run here because we want to get you in front of the TV for the start of that game. But quickly, what's your prediction for the other series, the Avs and the Oilers? Obviously, the Avs are up 1-0. What is your prediction for that?
Yeah, so that's going to be an absolutely insane series. I feel like, on paper and also what we've seen, Colorado is definitely the better rounded team. Huge advantage in goaltending, even though they didn't show that in Game 1. I'll be really interested to see what Edmonton does in goal because Smith, he's got 1 foot out the door. He can't stop anything in net, regardless of who they're playing. They pulled him. they put in Kakinen, and he actually looked pretty darn good. So it'll be interesting to see if they stick with him. And if he can play, to that level the rest of the series, the Oilers have a legitimate shot. I think game 2 is going to be huge. If Edmonton can tie it up, go home with the series tied up, that atmosphere, just like MSG, has been absolutely insane. That's a really tough place to play right now in the postseason. It's one of those series where you could see the Avalanche winning something like 4-1 just because they are the much more well-rounded team, better goaltender, better defense. But Edmonton's sneaky good, I feel like. They put up enough points, enough offensive presence that they can kind of compete with just about anybody, because it doesn't matter how bad your goaltending is. If you can go out and score 6-7 goals a night, it's still very difficult for teams to beat you. This is a really tough one for me to predict, but I think, realistically, what makes the most sense, I'm going to say Colorado in 6 in the West, but I would not be shocked if Edmonton can end up making this a very hard-fought series and potentially go to Game 7.
Awesome. Well, Garth, appreciate your prediction. I'm going to let you run here. Want you to plug your show one more time here before we let you go. And we appreciate you coming on, as always. So
yeah, thank you for having me on, guys. I love, coming on here regardless of what we're discussing, but especially tonight, Stanley Cup playoffs. Unfortunately, one of those rare occurrences where me and Tom are rooting against one another. It doesn't really happen, oddly enough. Usually we're on the same side of the fence and rooting for the same teams, but it is that one rare occurrence. But yeah, you guys, like I said earlier in the show, every Friday night, for the most part, we take a week off here and there just to keep ourselves refreshed and not talking about kind of the same topics on a weekly basis. But every Friday night here on Facebook, Sweet Tea Podcast, me and Noah Dog Deibler, as we've come to know him by, get some really awesome guests on there. Tom himself actually comes on sometimes. We've got college football coming up, and we go really, really in depth. That's kind of our strong suit for sure. But yeah, you guys can follow us over on the Sweet Tea page here on Facebook, as well as I said earlier, the Sports Box as well. You get notifications through the Sports Box group when we do go live every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. You guys can catch us here on Facebook.
Awesome, Garth. Well, thank you so much for joining. Appreciate your time, and best of luck tonight, buddy.
Yes, sir. With the utmost respect, best of luck, but let's go Tampa Bay Lightning.
We'll do a air gentleman's handshake on that. Appreciate you, Garth.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good one, man.